been here, I would say that we've actually had winters that have been, you know, well, if you go to Fort Erie, you get more winter than you get in Niagara Falls, more snow than you get in Niagara Falls. But typically, I would say that you get kind of, let's say, 6 to 10 snowfalls. You get temperatures that typically in the -10 to -15 degree mark, with the occasional lower than that, right? This year we were kind of languishing at the most at -5, I think, and we got, what was it, 2 snowfalls,
something like
2 week
that. Yeah.
snowfalls.
Yes. Yeah, and even our winters, they're patchy, right? You get 2 weeks of snow, and then the snow melts, and then you get 2 weeks of snow, and then the snow melts. Nothing like when we were younger, right? We had 6 months of winter, easy, right?
You mean the first snowfall? You mean the first snowfall happened in November?
Yeah, and it
or
was
October?
nonstop when we used to get winter when we were younger. That was a cold snap for at least 4 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now we're not getting that at all. We aren't getting even a half of that, right? Like,
Well, yeah, you see, when I first came here, okay, the first winter I came was unusual in that I was living in Beamsville, and I was flying out west to BC, and out there they had, it was, you got to the border of Ontario, and then from there west it was snowy.
yeah, -30 out there.
Ontario was green, right? The whole of Ontario was green. We had frozen rain that year. I'd never encountered frozen rain before, right?
Yeah, that's not a nice experience.
Now that's deadly stuff, right?
Yeah.
That can be pretty deadly, that stuff. And
Oh, yeah.
if it freezes things like those big power boxes on the pole, and you get a stalactite from those, you could get electrocuted, apparently.
Yeah, not only that, the trees, right? Any kind of weak spots in the
Oh, yeah.
trees, and those branches are falling down and shattering like glass, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's the cause of most of the power outages, is the trees, right?
Yeah. And I've not seen winters like that for a while,
Yeah.
And we haven't, and as a consequence, we seem to be getting hotter summers right now.
Well, especially United States, right? They're getting 100-degree plus weather for like stretches of 21, 22 days in a row. And that's just vicious, right? No break in sight at nighttime or daytime. That's just something we've never experienced here. We don't get the 100 degrees very often, but down south they've been getting it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. We had what was it? We had 45 degrees in BC last year, I think. But we've been, I think our summer temperatures have been 30 plus the last few years, typically going up to 30 plus. And it's, whereas I think typically I would say we'd be 25 to 30.
Yeah. And out in Jasper right now, they're hoping for rain, rain, and rain. A shout out to the people in Jasper. Half the city's burned down, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is about fires seem to go in cycles, don't they?
Yeah, and I'm nobody ever says what caused the fire. I'm thinking there's a lot of man-made stuff going on here, right?
Well, yeah, the potential is because of insurance claims and that kind of stuff. But how would you really know? Angela says they need to do a rain dance.
Oh, big time! They're in trouble, man. It's horrific to watch.
Well, one of those, that rain cloud kind of looks like a tornado.
It causes its own storm too, right? It's got lightning going.
Yeah.
It's a wicked pattern. But once it starts to engulf a city, all you could do is pray for the people and hope they all get out safe. Even the first responders, the first responders for forest fires are the scariest because they could get trapped so easy, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But you know, mostly, you know, you don't. The thing about these big fires is you rarely hear of deaths except for in the forest fire community.
Yeah, it's not a thing you want to ride out. Some people do ride them out to save their house, but is your house worth that much? I don't think so. Material things could be replaced. You and your life and your family's life cannot. To stay back and try and fight the fire to save your house is a crazy thing to do, especially if you see it engulfing half a city. You're best to get out.
Well, I think the air quality you should probably drive you out at that point.
Yeah, they even got a golf tournament going on in Calgary right now. And if I was a pro athlete, I wouldn't want to be there breathing that.
Yeah, 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 and that's kind of, you know, what's that, 50 kilometers away or more?
Yeah,
A lot more actually, isn't it?
but it was pretty
And
smoky there.
yeah, and remember last year when we had those fires up north, I couldn't smell them, but there were people down here that said they could smell the fires. I think
I
they
could
were.
I could smell them outside when that was
Yeah, well,
happening, and the air
I
quality
couldn't.
was the air
I
quality
couldn't,
was
but I
bad
could
too,
tell the
right?
air quality was lower. I couldn't smell fire per se, except for when there was actually a fire in St. Catharines one day. Came
Yeah,
out
yeah,
the office and oh my god, the stink of fire was right in the air. But I said it can't be that. It can't be that. You know, those fires from up north, because you know I think yes, I agree the air quality was low, but I couldn't smell fire per se, you know,
yeah.
generally speaking.
It was when it's really humid air and you could feel the air's thick. That's how the air was during that time.
Yeah.
It was
Oh, I know. Yeah.
like a thick air, right? You could
Yeah.
feel the heaviness in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You could feel the heaviness in the air caused by those particles. And
A lot of times,
I couldn't smell it, but and Angela's saying she was able to smell it because it was like a huge barbecue without any hot dogs.
yeah, there were people, people with asthma that were affected during those times.
I suspect, you know, obviously everybody is slightly different in how they and how they get that. I just didn't smell anything. You know, I had other people were saying, "Oh, it smells terrible outside." I'd go outside, nothing there.
Yeah, maybe your sense of smell isn't very
But
good.
I was going to say, I do have fairly rotten sense of smell when it comes down to it.
Yeah, me
You
too.
know, yeah,
Me too.
yeah. Okay, so moving on, healthcare workers fearing
So I was reading
privatization.
the Ontario police story.
Sorry?
Oh, the healthcare workers fear privatization. I actually think that the pharmacists given extra powers is the beginning of privatization of healthcare.
Well, actually, that's also another one that is on the list. We can come to that in a minute. So basically, yeah, Stoney Creek. They had a rally Tuesday about these plans to use public funding to pay for treatments within private facilities because they're fearing, they're fearing that their jobs could be at risk, right?
I think privatization is being pushed by the Ford government, and it's a major agenda of theirs. They think that's the answer. I don't know if it's the answer. We need help bad, but do we need privatization? I don't think it belongs in the healthcare system. I don't think profit belongs in the healthcare system. It's not something that we believe in as Canadians, and it's not a good thing.
Well, the thing is, there's always two. You know, there's always two views upon that, aren't there? There is the view that we put we pay our taxes, we put aside a percentage of tax money to ensure there is universal public health for everybody in a given country. We're not talking necessarily about Canada here. And the other one is that you then have this question about, and we were talking about accountability and making sure budgets were met and etc. in relation to other governmental things yesterday. So there's then the topic of accountability of that money that's put in the healthcare system, right?
Yes.
Britain, for example, 40 years ago under Thatcher was basically saying that the NHS was a bad thing and that we needed to, we needed to privatize it, but she never privatized it.
Yeah, she knows what a political thing that is, right? It's a political
Well,
time
she
bomb.
found out what a political thing that was, and basically she did modify the way the NHS ran. Is one of the biggest problems about the NHS is it's a humongously bad bureaucracy. When you at the time when I was in England, it used to be about 20 cents of the average dollar paid to the NHS got to healthcare, to actual patient healthcare. Now that figures down. I heard, I keep an eye on it. That figures down to about 7 cents the last time I checked.
Right. And what's their healthcare like compared to ours?
No better. You
No.
still, what happens is doctor gives you a referral to a specialist. It might take you anywhere up to 3 years to get a specialist appointment. Right.
Yeah, see, that's insanity.
If you're seeing a cancer specialist, you could be dead by then.
Yeah, we got a real problem like that in Canada too. Even just to get a picture taken is taking people months. I got a neighbor across the street that popped his knee out, and by the time he gets a picture taken, his short-term disability is over.
Yeah.
The Ford government right now seems to be starving the healthcare system so that he could say, oh, we're going to privatize this and they're going to save us, right? And we're all supposed to celebrate. But
I don't think privatization saves anybody, because what you have actually in Britain is you have this kind of half system. So you have kind of where the hospital where the royal where some of Diana's kids were, where the princes were born, is actually partially public, partially private, always has been. But if you're going in there for like emergency, you'll get seen in probably 6 hours. But if you're going to be booking up an appointment to go and get whatever done, you're probably waiting 3 or more years to get that appointment to fix what's wrong with you. Yet if you can pay for it, you can go to the same hospital and get it done in months.
So see, the availability is there for it to be done in months.
Yeah.
Right. The availability is there for it to be done in months. So they're showing that they can do it, but you have to pay.
Yeah.
So it's just wrong, right? Imagine if you have a healthcare scare where you have to go to the emergency ward and then you have to worry about mortgaging your house to take care of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's I'm really proud that we don't have that, and if we go there, we'll never get it back.
Yeah. Yeah, so I understand where I understand where the healthcare workers are going out there and saying, "Hey, we feel our jobs are at risk." Are they? I think time will tell. I think.
Well, their jobs would be at risk in the private sector, but I mean in the public health system. But they'll be able to go to the private sector and get a job, right?
Well, what bothers?
Question is, would that pay the same?
Yeah, well, what bothers me is actually people who may well be leaving the public sector because the private sector salaries are 20% more.
So that's what I'm getting at. Do they pay more because they make more?
Yeah. So they go to the private sector because because why would I go to a public sector when I can get private sector money, 20, 30, 40% more than I get paid here?
Right. So if they're paying more because they're making more, then you're going to start making an unfair system, right? And
Well, one person put to me that, hey, if we're guaranteeing that we're going to be doing operations in so many months, but hey, I've never heard any guarantees that you're going to do operations in so many months.
right. Right. And well, you know what? There's proof in the pudding though, because we watch every day as a professional athlete twists an ankle or strains a muscle, and the next day they
Yeah.
get an MRI.
Yeah.
The next day, and those are Canadian athletes too. The next
And,
day they
but
get an
again,
MRI.
but
So how
again,
is it?
what happens very often with that is their team that they are that they are with often pays thousands of dollars to make that MRI happen.
So it's a prime example of what's wrong here, right?
You
So
know,
if
everybody
you're
should
rich,
be
you're
able
gonna
to.
get if you're
Yeah.
rich, you get preferential treatment, and if you're poor, you're put on the back
Well,
burner.
the thing is, I've got no objection to that individual getting an MRI. But then again, why can't a concert pianist go get an MRI as well on the next day?
Yeah, and we got people right now. Like I said, the guy
Or a
across the street
plumber?
popped his knee out, and
Yeah.
it's going to take him how many months to get a picture? He's tempted to go to the United States and get a CAT scan done, where it costs you $500. But then would the Canadian Medical Association recognize that picture from the United States?
Well, it should all be electronic images. They should have it sent to his doctor. That's something, though, that he could probably ask the company in the United States. But hey, and I know, and don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying, okay, I agree that there are some people out there that couldn't afford $500 for a CAT scan, but could we also say that, hey, there are some people who would scrape together the money for a CAT scan at $500? Why can't they get an MRI or a CAT scan done if they were done at a reasonable price like that?
Because if that CAT scan is available to be done tomorrow for $500, then it should be available for our healthcare system to do it too.
Yeah, well,
that's the thing I can't get through my head. It really burns me to see a professional athlete rip a calf or pull a muscle, and then they get a CAT scan, and the next day they say, "Oh, there's no problem here."
Yeah, but you
Meanwhile,
see what?
we have our loved ones waiting a year just to get a picture taken.
Yeah, yeah. I know we do have a problem. MRIs and CAT scans are, some of the worst problems, because very often the doctor's not going to make a recommendation unless you've got an MRI or CAT scan, right?
Yes, yes, and it's a horrible thing that you're sitting there waiting for this so you can move forward with your medical. The most simple
Yeah,
thing, which is just a picture, right? And
yeah,
why is it that way?
yeah. Because one of the things that happened with mine is I had an MRI of my ankles and lower leg. They didn't do my knee. They just did the ankles and lower leg. And when so I complained about ankles to my doctor, and actually she sent me for an X-ray, and she said the X-ray is actually comparable to the MRI. It's not gotten any worse, right? She's not saying it wasn't bad. She just said it hadn't gotten any worse.
Right.
The problem is with my ankle condition, there's actually no knee replacement surgery. There's no ankle replacement surgery.
Right. Right. And sometimes the MRI won't tell you stuff, and a CAT scan won't tell you stuff, but a neurologist will be able to find it.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
I always like to see the neurologist if you're waiting for a CAT scan or an MRI, in the meantime, you should be seeing a neurologist, because they could pinpoint pretty well what is wrong. And most of the time you'll have to see a neurologist before you see a surgeon anyways. So it's always a good thing to try and get to a neurologist if you have problems like that too.
Yeah, Angela says, I'm one of those people that can't pay $500 for a CAT scan. Yeah, that, I said that, but I'm like, I'm with you in so far as why can't they be available? Well, I'm not saying next day, but next week.
Yeah, no, I don't want it to be a ridiculous thing and be the next day, but waiting a year or two for a picture to be taken, and that's what's holding up everything, is just insane. That's insane. There's really no excuse for it other than they're pushing the agenda to be privatized.
And again, Angela makes the point: why should normal everyday people wait years while some celebrity just walks in and does it straight away? All citizens should be able to get the same access.
I agree, and it burns me every time I watch it and every time I see it, and it happens, especially in pro athletes, baseball players, football players, and stuff like that. It's my personal opinion that their job's not more important than your job or mine. I don't think
just
their job
is
more
a lot different.
So I don't understand why they get this treatment and we do not.
Yeah, well, they're just paid a heck of a lot different. That's all, right?
Yes,
because
that should make a difference on medical, right?
Yeah. All right. Okay. So next one you talked about: Ontario is considering allowing pharmacists to treat more ailments. Now, at the moment, there's a short list of ailments they can treat. So you can go in there if you've got a cough or something. There's a few things that they can do, and the health minister Sylvia Jones is saying the province is consulting with the industry about treating several more common ailments, right? Things like shingles and sleep disorders. I have to have my wonder here, because it's almost to my mind, the problem lies is that what they're trying to say is there's a box here, and in the box there are there are certain ailments that we've got, and your ailment fits in the box, right? Yet in reality, most people's ailments don't fit in that box. They're something else. It is like this disease, but it's not. It's like this one and this one. Let's mix together, but with a touch of something else.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the privatization of healthcare. This is taking away responsibilities of medical practitioners and trying to dump it onto pharmacists. Pharmacists are not doctors, and if they make a mistake on the diagnosis, the liabilities are going to be ridiculous.
Well, and that's the crux of the matter. Pharmacists are not doctors. They can't diagnose. They don't have the right to diagnose. So the pharmacies are taking some of these because they need to cut the number of emergency visits by people with the sniffles, and that is true. What Angela says there is true. That's a larger point about why pharmacists are in that state, right? Being asked to do that right now. But again, their license is to treat. Their license is not to diagnose.
Yeah, the lack of doctors is part of that problem. When there's a lack of doctors, you cannot get diagnosed for a cold, and you have to go to the emergency room. One moment, please.
Yeah. And that's a problem. That therein lies a problem, really, doesn't it? Because essentially having enough doctors is an important thing. And we've been talking about the lack of doctors in the Niagara region for quite some time. Even though they employed 2 earlier this month, they're still lacking. I think they're still lacking somewhere in the region of 30 doctors in the Niagara region. I was saying, despite the fact that we employed a couple last month, we're still down about 30 doctors.
Yeah, so there's a big snowball thing happening in our healthcare system, right?
Yeah.
Um, and 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 as they're trying to alleviate one problem, they're creating another. And pharmacists didn't sign up for this. They got
I,
people, when COVID happened, they started dumping stuff on pharmacists for COVID, and they weren't happy about that either because they were being exposed to getting sick, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I know that it's the beginning of the privatization of healthcare. And we shouldn't allow this to happen because it's very sneaky and underhanded.
Well, privatize. I think the argument is that privatization is more efficient,
You could
right?
make that argument, but you could also stop hiring nurses. You could change the way that you do cleaning in hospitals, and you could cause these problems, and then say, "Oh, here's our answer: privatization." And that's
Yeah.
exactly what the Ford government has done over the times he's been in power. He's starved the system, and he's going to break it. And that's exactly what he did with the liquor board. Now he's privatizing. He's union busting everybody, and he's doing it in a diabolical way. And we're watching it happen in healthcare, and it's going to happen if we keep this guy in power.
Well, okay, then, anyway, we'll go there another day. No, let's not go down that rabbit hole, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is an ugly rabbit hole, and the pharmaceutical industry is now becoming a medical industry, and I don't think it's right, and I think
Well,
we should stop it before it grows even more.
well, Angelo agrees with you, and he's trying to do this to enrich his wealthy friends. I I have I've always had a problem with big pharma because all too often I believe that the history has shown that big pharma has been very big on giving essentially dictating to doctors the types of things that can be not diagnosed. I mean, that can be prescribed.
Yes,
And you are being, people are being
one moment.
prescribed inappropriate drugs all the time, and that's always bothered me. And half of the drugs that are in our system actually are drugs that probably shouldn't even be on the market, right? Or you should be told, yes, but this drug's been around for 50 years, but it's still only experimental because you could still die from it, right? And that's the biggest problem that I have is when you come to these drug ads that the Americans have, how they kind of there's 5 seconds about the benefits and 25 seconds about the problems that drug has, right? And that's one of the issues that I see with the drug industry overall,
Yeah, well,
right?
we got a problem where the doctors in Canada have signed documents that state the only thing that could cure a disease are medications, right?
Yeah.
And then the pharmacists are automatically tied with the medical. Well, we know there's natural remedies that work too. So
Oh
we
yeah.
need to change
But you
something
see,
in the
the
medical wording
pharmacists.
of that, right?
Yeah, we know there are natural remedies that work too, but pharmacists and because of the hold the pharmacists have on the medical profession, doctors therefore only prescribe drugs. They never look at natural remedies.
They're
Okay,
not allowed
and
to. They're not allowed to.
yeah, yeah. And Alicia Mary makes the point that the reasons people go to the emergency room are sometimes beyond ridiculous. They are there to, they they too are a strain on the system. That's true. Yeah,
Yes, yes, and
absolutely.
and we do have the phone numbers now where you could call and see if you should go to an urgent care center or a hospital or which medical treatment you should get. Um, and you know what? if you're not sure, you should phone that number. I
Well,
mean,
actually, my doctor is part of a group of doctors here in the Niagara region that if the doctors are not open, you call the doctor's number, right? Even on a Saturday morning, often a Saturday afternoon, you can get a doctor in the group to actually look at you. If you can't do that, you can go to the emergency. But if you go to a walk-in clinic, you will be off the doctor's list.
yes, you have little
Because
clicks.
what will happen is the walk-in clinic will take something like, there's a massive amount when you walk into the walk-in clinic, and the doctor gets that money taken out of their budget.
Yes, there's little clicks, and those little clicks again are the beginning of a push to privatize issues. You could have those little clicks, and they'll send you to their specialists, they'll send you to their people, and then you can't get out of the Niagara Regional Healthcare System if you have a problem and you need it looked at by somebody else, right? This is another thing that will be a push for privatization. When you get clinics all together that work together like that, you're going to get trapped in a system. And if you don't like the doctors that are in that system, too bad, so sad for you, right? And then you go to a walk-in clinic, they don't share that information with your family doctor. That's just wrong.
Yeah. Well, and also they take money from your family doctor's budget.
Yes. And
They literally take the money out of, they take a huge chunk of money. You go in there, it's free, but they take a huge amount of money out of your, your family doctor's pocket.
Yes. So they're creating messes like that in the medical system. And then what happens? Doctors are bolting over the states for more money, right?
Right. So Angela says, Mike, sounds like the HMOs in the US with the insurance companies.
It's very scary. Yes.
Yeah. And well, I think there's some very scary situations there, right? Okay. So moving on to a story we didn't get to yesterday. Canadian and American dignitaries have gotten were on the earlier this week, we're on the Gordie Howe Bridge to celebrate a milestone because of the fact that they've now got the road surface, both, it's complete across the bridge. Now, of course, they've got to tarmac it, etc., etc. And the Canada's infrastructure minister, Sean Fraser, was basically saying that he's hoping this is going to be done ahead of schedule. He's just cursed this entire project, hasn't he?
When does it ever get done on schedule?
Well, if it had been done on schedule, then the minister, as soon as the minister gets up there and says, well done, lads, you're well ahead of schedule, the lads go, okay, that means I can have my holidays now.
Yeah. But both sides of the bridges are connected now, and couldn't have come up with a better name for the bridge. Gordie Howe, of course, was a Canadian, but he played for Detroit for so many years. It was the most suitable name that I could ever think of for that bridge. I think it was awesome. And this is gonna be a huge entranceway for Canada-U.S. borders. This might make that border a lot more busy than the Rainbow Bridge, maybe.
Well, both of those, this is the second bridge in and around the Detroit. Actually, there's the Sarnia Bridge as well. So there's 3 bridges in that general area now, aren't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's huge entry, and
these are massive bridges. These are big bridges.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
These are 6-lane bridges, 3 lanes in each direction type bridges. They're not like the bridge that we have here. Like they're not like the Rainbow Bridge.
No, you look
which
at
is a
the
sleepy
Rainbow
town bridge.
Bridge. The Rainbow Bridge looks outdated.
Yeah, the Rainbow Bridge is a sleepy town side bridge, isn't it?
Yeah, and it just seems so outdated, old, decrepit.
I
You know,
wouldn't get rid of it. I wouldn't get rid of it. I think it's a great bridge to have. But what we need, you see, what we need is actually, we need another bridge somewhere.
right,
You
right.
know,
And I'm surprised they haven't done that by now. Even
another highway bridge.
Even Queenston Lewiston Bridge, right? It doesn't seem as big as it should be.
Well,
It should be bigger.
yeah, the Queenston Lewiston Bridge probably should be twice the size. The Peace Bridge needs to be twinned.
Yes, yes. So
Right.
I think they need to do this all the way through because we're outdated, right?
In fact, actually, when the Peace Bridge opened, I was speaking to somebody from Buffalo. He was telling me that even when the Peace Bridge opened back whenever, and I forget, he told me, but I forgot. And he basically said that from a certain point, almost like 5 years after the Peace Bridge opened, there was a desire to actually double twin that Peace Bridge almost right away, and the concept was required actually knocking down some factory on the US side, because that was the only way they were going to manage to get that bridge twinned, was to actually take out that factory. The trouble was, in order to do that, it was like it would have cost the factory massive production. But now that factory's empty, has been empty for the last 15 years, and you could easily do it, but there's still reticence on the American side to actually expand the bridge that way.
Yeah, and that bridge is gridlock, right? In the summer, it's
nonstop. In the summer, it's 90 minutes to get across sometimes.
Yeah, it's nonstop. It's gridlock, and all the way up Highway 420 past Robinson Street, you could see the lineup of cars because of that bridge a lot of times, right? So I think it's been needed for many years. Like you said, by the time they finished rebuilding it and fixing it up, they realized that it's too small.
No, I was talking about the Peace Bridge.
Yeah,
not the Rainbow Bridge. I was talking about the Peace Bridge. Yeah.
Still, I think it applies to both of them.
Well, the Rainbow Bridge basically also needs probably twinning. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, both of them are so busy during the summer seasons. I think it tells you that they need something, right?
Yeah. But you see, what will happen if we twin the Rainbow Bridge is we lose that park next to it, right? Because if you twin the Rainbow Bridge, you have to twin it if we're looking at the USA, you'd have to twin it on the right-hand side because there isn't the ground space available on the left-hand side.
Right. What a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. And but hey, whichever way you twin it, it's it's still millions of dollars, federal budget, etc., right?
Yeah, and opening the border up to more vehicles is always a challenge because we're talking about a border, right?
Okay, so while you were talking about the Gordie Howe Bridge and what a great name for it, I have to wonder that with the next story, St. Catharines, long-term St. Catharines councillor Joe Kushner is having a city park named after him, and I have to actually wonder whether naming buildings, naming parks and the like after city councillors, albeit ones that have been around for a while, is a good thing. Because, for example, the Wayne Thompson building downtown, I think it's the worst possible name for it. Sorry. There are a large number of people in this city that have zero respect for that man.
That's what I was just going to say. You got somebody in politics, and he's served for 30, 40, 50 years. That's a great service, right? That's a great service, but you don't have 100% support for the people that are in politics, right?
I don't know Joe Kushner. Angela does. Basically, apparently, Joe Kushner's been on city council for something like 30 years, maybe longer. And when he went on originally to city council, I believe he was one of the people that said councillors sit for too long and should have 2-term limits.
I was just going to say, I don't believe in anybody serving in city council that long. I think it should be a 2-term limit too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who do, but unfortunately, it's not a bylaw that you can even set up in city council, because that's actually part of the municipal what do you call it? Municipal Elections Act. In order to get that changed, you would have to change that act.
Well, then we need to change it. I mean, I don't know too many people that believe that people should be allowed to be in city council that long.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's not that you have 2 terms only, it's that you have 2 terms and then you've got to rest.
Well, you could go for mayor, you could go for MPP, you could go for a different political position, because after you've gained the experience, if you still want to serve the public, you could do that, right? But once you're a career politician, you're a career crook, right?
Well, that always is the allegation, and I'm not going to make any such accusations, because that's tough to prove. But yeah, I get that's what a lot of people believe, right? As soon as you're on there, as soon as you're a politician, you're a crook. And not all of them are. There are plenty of politicians that have been up there and done good work, right? And I think overall, she's in her 2nd term, and Lori Lococo is doing good work.
Yes.
I don't agree with everything she votes on, but that's the way, that's life, right?
You're never going to agree on everything anybody is doing politically. Even if you like the person and voted for them, you're not going to agree with 100% with everything they do, because that's politics, and that's the way it is. I mean, there's never going to be 100% agreement on everything, right? So
no, there can't be. And you see, that's exactly why when they put things up, there's somebody who raises their hand and said, "I would like an amendment for, more cycle lanes in this area," type thing. That kind of amendment gets proposed all the time. Whether it succeeds or not is quite another issue.
Yeah, so they want to name the park after him, and
actually,
and who was the park named after before?
It's okay. Monday night, they passed a motion to rename Woodgate Park in St Andrews Ward to Joe Kushner Park. But the interesting thing about this is Joe Kushner walked out the meeting and said it was a bad thing. He didn't want it, and he was not going to be in. There was a conflict of interest, and he was not going to be involved in this discussion.
Yeah, he wasn't happy.
He was not happy about the thing, and I wouldn't be happy. Okay, so on the surface you go, "Oh, they named that after me. Isn't that nice?" But then on the underneath, I'm thinking to myself, let's be realistic. Every politician, there's probably people who would say, Lori Lococo is the worst city councillor there is, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that there's going to be a majority of people that are going to say, "Who the hell is Joe Kushner?"
That's true as well. Never heard of Joe Kushner.
Majority of people, right?
Yeah.
So, it's no offense to Joe Kushner. It's just that people don't follow politics, right?
Exactly.
So I don't believe in naming parks after politicians because of that alone, right? There's a great many people that don't even know who any of the politicians are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are they going to
Woodgate,
support that name change?
and probably what will happen is the local residents who use the park will still call it Woodgate Park anyway, even though there's a nice shiny sign on it that says Joe Kushner Park.
Yeah, if it's been that name for a very long time, sometimes you should just leave it as it
Yeah.
is. And
And,
if you
and
want
it's
to build
like,
a new park, or they also have, street names that you could do, which I would think would be more appropriate than a park name.
Yeah, I have no problem them putting Kushner in the street name list, and I don't think anybody would.
And that solidifies it in history, right?
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Now, for example, utilizing the name Thompson, where Wayne Thompson has a different spelling than many other Thompsons because he doesn't have a P in it. There is already a street with the name Thompson out there already, which actually has a P. I would say it would be difficult to put that name in because of the confusion over P or no P.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And let's not forget, Wayne Thompson was mayor for many years too, which is a little different than city councilor, right?
Yeah, I know, and I'm not criticizing. I just don't like buildings named after politicians.
No,
I
I'm
don't,
with you. I'm with you.
or parks or anything of that nature. I don't. I have no objection to their name being put into into a street name list, right?
Yeah, I think the street name
For
list is.
example, we could happily have a Peter Angelo Street or a Cario Street or something like that. Why not? Why not put them in the list?
Because right now, if you wanted your name put on it, you just have to pay a certain amount of money to City Hall and then put it in, right? So so it's possible, and it's a respectful way to do things, and not something like a park, right? A street name will solidify you in history because it's going to be there forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, looking at St. Catharines, Cisco Street, I can see that. A new subdivision opens up, and Cisco Street is in that list.
Yeah, that's a respectful way to do things, I think.
Yeah.
But parks themselves, I don't know. We've always named parks after people from history or somebody that's really made a huge change in.
Or actually, it's because it's named because of a local thing, what it was originally named as, right?
Right. Right.
It's like a Valley Road park or something.
Yeah, a geographical area or whatnot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's used to be the orchards. Used to be the orchards here, and that became now a park. So it's now Orchard Park.
Right. Right.
And that's what everybody's known it for. And so to suddenly call it, after somebody, I think it's a massive change. And like when we had this question about, there was a proposal about renaming Bender Street to be after Nikola Tesla Way. Well, I was opposed to that. Nikola Tesla is one of a scientific hero of mine, but I'm opposed to that name change because the Bender family are such an important part of Niagara Falls history.
Yes, and I don't think they should change any of the names. If you're adding new streets, then make a new street name on one of the new streets, right?
Yeah. If you want to celebrate Nikola Tesla, put new Nikola Tesla Boulevard in a new street or something like that, right?
Yeah, because I look at all the street names in Niagara Falls, and almost all of them are historic, right?
Well, actually, one of the big problems I think with Ontario street names is that we have too many that are actually Ontario names. How many cities have a John Street, a King Street, a Queen Street, a Huron Street, and Ontario Street? You can reel off a name: Dundas, Toronto, Huron. You can reel off the name list that exists in every single city, right? You know, for example, if you go to England, when I lived in Southampton, you'd get a London road because it's the road to London, right? It was the main road to London leading out of the city. So of course there's a London road, right? And you'd get a Portsmouth road because Portsmouth is the next city down the lane. But most of the names are all related to things and people that existed in history in that general area. You don't have a lot of doubling of names. So of course most towns or cities in UK have probably got a London road, and they've got also another road that might well be to their biggest local city, you know, like a Manchester road or Liverpool Street or something like that. But they generally speaking, they have names that relate to their local area.
Yeah.
You know, that essentially what happened is they built this and it was the Aurora Woodlands, and now now they've got the main street is called Aurora Street, and off of it is is names for local things that would have happened in that area.
Yeah, so it says that Mr. Kushner's really upset about it, and his family will probably be very happy, but he doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
So I agree with him. I think maybe they should have just did a street name instead of a park name, and moved on.
And Angela says there should be a Giblett Circle. There you go. I think Giblett Grove, but still.
Yeah, I got a Cushman Road sign in my backyard.
Yeah, you know, and you know, as you say, you could pay money to put your thing on the list. And actually, there was I remember from my youth, there was an area where there was a family that owned a plot of land, and I forget what was on it, but once the older people died off when I was young, once they died off, they did allow it to be utilized and move over to a residential complex because it was in a broadly residential area. And they said one condition about this is that the central name in there should be the same as the original business that was there. You know, well, I don't remember. I don't remember what it was.
We don't retain history like we should. So anytime we do retain history, I kind of like it.
Yeah, and that was right for that area because I don't know. Let's call it Macy Orchards for whatever reason, right? And there should be a Macy Orchards Lane or something there, right? The main road in there, right?
You know, history like that, sometimes I get mad when they just let it slip away, right? We look at how many historical places have been gone in Niagara Falls, and they're gone. And once they're gone, they're never back, right?
There's no memory of them at all.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah,
I like preserving the history. I like sometimes you just keep the original building and then build on top of it or around it, stuff like that, so that you still got a little bit of that history in there, right? Like,
but again, I could say something would make you quiver. Cyanamid Alley. Let's rename 4th Avenue to Cyanamid Alley.
Well, I never deny the history that was here, but you also have to remember with that history comes some ugliness.
Yeah, I know. So, you know, I'm being facetious, and I don't think there would be anybody, even on city council, that would be voting for that name change, would they?
Yeah, right now they're kind of at odds with them, right? So,
you know, I don't see that happening at all. No. You know, it's you know, I've just never been in favor of it. Pick. You know, probably Woodside Park, Woodgale Park is probably because of, the area where the park was etched out from, right? And why isn't it kept that way? Why don't you just leave things alone, right?
Well, like you said, the people that live there will always call it that, right? So
yeah,
it's embedded in their head since they were a kid. They're not going to change the name of it in their heads, right? So
no, and it's a tough thing too to do that, right? It really is a tough thing to do that. Okay, where are we? Okay, so quick other one. Here's an interesting one. So there's a report in the review about a former addict using his history to help others as a peer support worker. This is actually quite common. I had a friend in America who died about 4 or 5 years ago. She actually was playing with some American band in Europe, and she got hooked on drugs, and she basically weaned herself off it. And for like the last 40 years, for 40, maybe 50 years, she was an addiction worker, right? And basically it saved her, and she's been, she was doing that all the time. So I think there's a lot of value in that, because a person what was once an addict, they know what everybody else is struggling through. So with the growing opioid epidemic, I think that's the right thing. It's a good thing for a person who's experienced it to be helping those that are going through it right now.
Well, it's you see how addiction destroys a person's life where they don't even care for their loved ones anymore. That addiction comes first. So if people right now are not going into the programs that they need to go in because they don't trust the systems. So if they don't trust the systems, the best thing to have are people that, like you said, know exactly what they're going through. Those are the people they're going to trust. And those will be probably the best systems that people will go to. Right now, you aren't finding people going into dry out clinics. They don't trust any of them. They feel that everybody's judgmental and they won't go to them. So I think this is a big part of the answer, is to have the people that have been through the same problems, helping the people and addressing their needs.
Yeah. And, and to a large amount about talking to them that there is a way out. It might not stop them from using the drugs today, but it might get them thinking about possible futures.
Well, when you see somebody that's quit, that gives you hope, right?
Yeah.
Me or you that have never been addicted to something, how could we offer them any kind of help when we don't know what they're going through?
I'm not addicted to something. I'm addicted to to the internet. Sometimes feel that way because I probably spend on an average day something like 10 hours a day doing stuff on the internet, but then I'm including in that just things I'm doing at work anyway, which is part of my work cycle,
right?
Because so many of them are internet based these days.
Yes, and addiction is uncontrollable, inexplainable, right? If you could explain it, then we'd be able to get in their head and help them, right? To date, we don't have a program that seems to be working. A methadone program doesn't seem to be working. I think the only thing that could reach people that are addicted are people that used to be addicted.
Yeah. And a constant challenge, of course, for those people that used to be addicted, because every one of them will admit that it's a day-to-day challenge because they live their life trying to help people who are addicted, because they know how much better it is not to be addicted. But there's, but given that there's the whatever caused them to be addicted might well be present in the community where they're talking to, where they're at right at the individual time.
Yeah, and I've seen people that have been addicted and how they can reach the street people like that. They could open up and have them talking in 5 minutes, and then if you get a so-called professional come out and they start talking to people that are addicted, they're out the door before you even blink.
Yeah.
So there's something there, and they need to tap into it because we can't reach the addicted if they're not going to come out, right?
Yeah.
And right now they're not coming out. They don't trust the healthcare workers. They feel they're judgmental, and that word judgmental is huge to try and get.
The problem is it's so easy to be judgmental.
Yes.
And about any situation, it's like you hear of, a person tells you their bad story, and it's so easy to just be judgmental. Well, why don't you just move on and get out of that situation, right? Type of thing, right?
Yeah.
But, we're not in that situation. So it's easy for us to say it's a whole heap harder for that person who's in that situation.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I went through withdrawals once, and it's a nasty, nasty thing. When I got my neck injured, they had me on anti-anxiety pills and sleeping pills and this and that and the other thing. Yeah. And I just stopped taking a couple of the pills. And after I was eating, I'd throw up for some reason. Every time I'd eat something, I was throwing up. I was going to a pain clinic at the time, and I had a pharmaceutical person that was part of the group that was helping me. And then I told the pharmaceutical girl what was happening to me. And she says, well, have you stopped taking anything lately that you were taking? And I told her the things I was taking. And she said, oh, honey, you can't stop those dead like that. You have to wean yourself off them. You're going through withdrawal right now. So for a week and a half, I was throwing up thinking I had the flu or something was really wrong. And I was going through withdrawal and didn't know it. So it's a very nasty thing. It is evil. I mean, you don't even.
Part of the problem relates back to what we were talking about with healthcare earlier on. There are drugs out there in the street that shouldn't be out on the street.
Yeah. Why is fentanyl even made, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Where we have, we have healthcare solutions that, hey, in the American adverts, which really tell the bare truth about some of these things, they say, here, our wonderful drug, it will cure you of this symptom, right? And you can live a wonderful life, without worry about the ailments. And then they spend 25 seconds listing off everything that could go wrong, usually including death.
Yeah, and the side effects from the medications are usually worse than what you're trying to cure.
Yes. Yeah.
And I find that disturbing because that's what's happening to a lot of people today.
And to my mind, I've always had this opinion that when you're seeing drugs like that, and you're seeing a situation whereby they have, there's the list of side effects is worse than the actual, the problem you're trying to solve. The drug hasn't been tested enough. It's been put to market way too early.
Yeah, who's the guinea pig, right?
Yeah, you're the guinea pig.
Yeah, the people are now being used as the guinea pig, right?
Yeah, and even after 50 years, you're still the guinea pig.
Yes.
Not
acceptable.
It's not.
That's what causes a mistrust of pharmaceuticals in the medical community, and that's why we're in such big trouble today.
Okay, and Chris Simone makes the point: the opposite of addiction is community, and that is exactly, I think, where this individual and why he's doing what he's doing, because he's a former addict. He's part of the community, and he's using these are community-based approaches.
Yeah, and like I said, if he could probably reach people that all the so-called professionals can't in about 5 minutes of
Yeah.
conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's even though those professionals are totally committed to helping people, they're just not getting through to people.
Yes, they're 100%. The intent is
Okay.
there.
Thank you, Chris, for asking that crucial question. What's his name? His name is Jesse Morden. There you go.
And we're over time again, Peter.
Yeah, we are. Well, we're just about on time now, but yeah, we're always over time. We're always over time, especially when Dave's on the show. Hey, there's two things that there's Dave has two names, Late Dave and Overtime Dave. So at the beginning of the show, it's always Late Dave, and at the end of the show, it's always Overtime Dave.
Well, right now he's having a nice vacation.
Yeah. Haven't heard from him in a little while. I wonder whether they were actually going off somewhere else in that boat.
Yeah, I've seen a couple pictures here and there. It looks awesome.
Yeah. Well, he's taken some pictures of his time in Portugal. I wonder if he's going to go across the border to Spain.
I would. The history is awesome.
Yeah. What I don't like about Spain, what I've never liked about Spain is the my fellow countrymen.
Right.
That's what I don't like about Spain, is that they have a bad name in Spain.
Yeah.
And I always fear that if I walk across the border, if I were to go across the border, let's say a land border from Portugal, that they go, oh, another one of these troublemakers. We don't want to let him in.
Yeah.
When I'd be nothing, I would never even think about it.
Yes. Yeah. Wicked history.
Yeah, it's a wicked history. And hey, the trouble is that you get people, British tourists that go to places like Malaga that spend 2 weeks drunk there, wouldn't even remember the place, and they smashed it up.
Yeah.
I hate that kind of thing. It's a bad reputation. And why should a nation have that kind of reputation in another nation?
Yeah, it's no good. You got to let bygones be bygones and move on.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being with us this week, and have yourself a great weekend.
Have a good weekend, people. It's supposed to be very sunny and nice. Enjoy the summer weekend.
All right. Bye.